So thank you for coming to the Osterville Village Library today. Thank you to Betsy Williams for coming down from Andover. Betsy teaches, lectures, and writes about living with herbs and flowers. She's a lifelong gardener, herb grower, and cook. She trained as a florist in Boston and England, and she combines her floral, gardening, and cooking skills with an extensive knowledge of history, plant lore, and seasonal celebrations. An entertaining lecturer, she weaves stories and legends throughout her informative talks and demonstrations. I think you'll enjoy her today, and full disclosure, Betsy is my mother.
Right.
Enjoy.
That's true. And Lisa is my daughter and thoroughly enjoying working at this beautiful little library, I must say. So, and I was thrilled about that because, oh, here, I have a silver garlic that's going to protect me. Whoops. Uh-oh. My silver garlic disappeared.
We'll
Oh,
find
no, there it is. Phew. I'm going to say, I have a silver garlic that's going to protect me from all evil. Not that there's any evil in the Osterville Library, but I wanted you to see it anyway. This is the ultimate, one of the ultimate of protections from any kind of mischievous or sort of unwelcome negative activity from spirits from now until November 1st. So this program is about plant lore, herbs and common plants that we use in our daily lives and most of us are reasonably familiar with, and how, because they're very ancient plants, how they were used in the past, and the connections between Halloween, when we all pig out on candy and wear costumes and have a good time, and Thanksgiving, because there is a very strong connection between the two of them. And that connection is the fact that they are both harvest holidays. Halloween began several thousand years ago when the Celtic tribes ended up at the very end of the European continent and in Brittany and Scotland and Wales and Ireland most particularly, and settled down and put down roots and built cultures. Now, the Celtic tribes began in India. They were an Indo-European tribe that came pouring out about, I believe, 4,000 or 5,000 years ago, and spread all across Europe, but ended up in concentrated groups all along that farthest edge of the European continent and the British Isles. And the ancient Celts, all of them, some of them turned into some of the Germanic tribes too. The ancient Celts firmly believed that the year was divided into two equal parts. There was winter and there was summer. Summer for the Celtics, the new year, began on May 1st and lasted until what we call, that would be today, October 30th. And there's winter began November 1st and lasted all the way through until May Eve, when summer came in once again. The time period between what we call November 30th, what we call October 30th, and we call November 1st, that 24-hour time period, which on our calendar appears as October 31st, was considered to be a 24-hour time period that floated between the end of the old year and the beginning of the new year. And because that 24-hour time period floated between the 2 years, it meant, according to Celtic, and that would be Druidic belief, that the veil that separated the everyday world from the spirit world thinned to the point where spirits could return to everyday world. And in some cases, humans could peer into and view the spirit world. It was a time of celebration because by October 30th, all of the Celts had a pastoral, as opposed to agricultural, a pastoral foundation. In other words, they depended on herds, particularly cattle. And so all those cattle were brought down from mountain feeding grounds by sundown on October 30th and penned for the winter. Those that were in excess were butchered and meat was put aside, preserved, to get the communities through their winter and non-growing season. And once those cattle were down and penned and the dawn broke on October 31st, everybody began to clean their homes according to old customs, clean their homes, scrape out their fireplaces, lay new fires, and prepare for sundown. Because once the sun went down on October 31st, that's when the spirits were allowed to roam. And the spirits of those family members who had already died and gone on before to the spirit world were, according to custom, allowed to come home. And they could come back to their own little cottages. The cottage was cleaned, food was prepared that they might like, laid out on the table, drink poured, a new fire laid on the hearth, and the door left open, and some kind of a light, some kind of a lantern left lighted in a window or just outside the door to guide those spirits back. And I've always thought that was kind of a neat idea. That there in the 19th century and early 20th century, there were poems and songs written about the fact that the spirits could come home and spend time at their own hearth, at their own table for that 12-hour period of darkness from sundown to sunrise on November 1st. Samhain is the old Celtic name for Halloween. And the time of Samhain was high festival. Originally, there were indeed sacrifices. There's some evidence of human sacrifice, but a lot of evidence of animal sacrifice done at that time of the year. The sun god, the Celtic sun god, was disappearing. He was receding. And so fires were built the night of Samhain. Great, big, huge bonfires on hilltops all over Celtic countries, all over Europe for that matter, and beseeching fires asking the sun god to come back, giving him strength to return. And those fires were considered sacred fires. Reports of those fires are quite wonderful to read because they really lit up the countryside. They apparently, anywhere you stood, you could see fires on the tops of hills. Now, going outdoors was maybe not particularly safe. It was possible that you could, particularly if you were standing at a crossroads, possible that you could meet up with some pretty unsavory spirits. So the majority of people stayed in their homes and stayed away from their hearth. They just went to bed early and got up once the sun came back on the morning of November 1st. Samhain was such a powerful feast and festival day for Celts, and actually, all, as I say, all across Europe for a while, that with the advent of Christianity, the early Christian church did everything they could to suppress it and to change it. And the interesting thing is that of all the feast and festival days on our current calendar, and this, by the way, is the most fascinating book to read. I think you'd really like this book. It's called The Dance of Time. And this takes you through the calendar year with all the legends and stories and traditions that are associated from European and American backgrounds during our 12-month circle of the sun. And it's absolutely fascinating to read. I read it over and over and over again because I always learn something brand new. And the library, by the way, will be able to get you any of these books through interlibrary loans so that you don't have to worry about buying them and you don't have to go online and spend money. You can borrow them from your library, which is one of our great gifts in this country. But the early church did everything they could to suppress this ancient holiday. And Halloween, of all the days on our celebratory days on our calendar, is the only one that has not been completely changed by the advent of the Christian church and its control of all of Europe for a couple of thousand years of history. It comes down to us as close to the original, without, of course, any of those sacrifices, as any holiday, any feast or festival day on our current calendar. It's really quite a gem of a day. We think of Halloween as pumpkins and witches and costumes. Pumpkins did not come into Halloween until the potato famine hit Ireland. And hundreds and thousands of Irish emigrated to the United States. Got on ships that were called famine ships, sailed across the ocean and landed in Boston and New York, and just poured into our country. Their custom of on Halloween or All Hallows Eve, of carving a lantern back home was originally from large turnips or even beets, because it's beets and turnips that kept our northern ancestors alive. Beets, turnips, and kale, those three things kept our ancestors alive and allowed humans to move forward all winter long. That's what they would eat. And so beets could grow this large. Turnips can grow huge. There are even folk tales of turnips and beets that have turned into houses for little people to live in. So this is as close as I can get to a good-sized turnip. This is the result of the search at Market Basket. I did not hack this out of the garden. But a turnip carved with a candle inside is one of the eeriest possible things you could imagine. It once upon a time, Lisa's brother, when he was 16 years old, I convinced him to carve a turnip. And when you put a candle inside this and you turn out every possible light, it's very hard to carve this. You turn out every possible light, you get the eeriest, most deadly lantern, jack-o'-lantern that you could ever imagine. Those pumpkins that we carved waited. They were here when the Irish landed. They did not use them at home. They did not grow pumpkins. Pumpkins are native to the North American continent. They found them here. They thought, aha, we don't have to worry about overgrown potatoes, and we certainly don't have to carve. And the minute that the Irish became established in our area, that's when America began celebrating Halloween. And we've been at it ever since. There are a lot of plants in our gardens and up and down our roadsides that are associated with magic. And this little arrangement that I did, and I'm gonna, there. This little arrangement that I did right here has a collection of them. And I think it will be going home with you guys. I don't even think we have to do a drawing. So, this is full of plant material that, used properly, can protect your home from any kind of negativity that might be floating around in the air at this time of the year. So I'm just going to name a few, and I won't pull it apart. Right here, there is some golden yarrow, and you can tell me if you can see it on the screen already, because there's golden yarrow. That represents the entire yarrow family. There are a lot of yarrows that grow up and down the sides of the road. Sometimes you see a pink yarrow. Normally it's a white one. Yarrow is a very ancient healing herb that was introduced to this country. It's not native to North America. The golden yarrow is a wonderfully decorative plant to have in your garden, and it dries quite nicely when it's fully developed. If you're interested in dried flower arrangements, this is the yarrow to dry for dried flower arrangements. But today you can buy plants of pink yarrows and burgundy, and one called paprika, which is a sort of a wonderful orangey shade. There's moonshine that we used to grow because I had a retail business for a lot of years, and we grew a lot of our own flowers, and we used to grow moonshine yarrow, just a lot of it. And it's just a soft yellow, absolutely lovely. Yarrow is, as I think I said, an important medicinal herb. It's also used in teas. It's a wonderful herb to have in your garden, and it's a good healing herb for packing wounds and things. And here, this is something that you can go foraging for probably right now. This is mountain ash. Right here, these are mountain ash berries, and here there's an old belief that oak, ash, and thorn, that's a regular oak tree, ash tree, and this is a mountain ash tree, and thorn, meaning hawthorn of some kind or another, and there's an entire variety of hawthorns that you can choose from. Together, the three of them put together make one of the most powerful protections against any force of evil that you could possibly imagine. So here you have berries from the ash tree dried, which dried perfectly. You have berries from hawthorn. These are hawthorn berries right here, which also dry beautifully. And you have oak leaves back here. These are oak leaves from, they're all dry and in place right at the moment. They have been spray painted with a floral paint. And the three of them together make this an incredibly protective little arrangement. The oak was the tree that the Druids worshipped under. The oak was the tree that supported the mistletoe that was so sacred to the Druids. And the oak was the tree that provided all kinds of benefits to the people who lived near and with oaks, including acorns and wood and dyes being made from oak leaves, and dyes being made from acorns. Mountain ash, these berries, I first learned years ago from a friend with a Lithuanian background, of that in his family and in his community, a Lithuanian-based community, that the mountain ash berries are collected every year. Mountain ash is considered to be a very protective tree to have planted on your property. And the berries were collected every year and packed into canning jars and then soaked in vodka. And you did that as soon as the berries came out. You gathered your berries, put them in the canning jar, soaked them in vodka, screwed the lid on, and put those jars in a dark cupboard somewhere and just let them sit. And come January 1st, you take them out and you begin sipping. And Yarrow said, they will keep that will keep you healthy all winter long. Well, you do a little investigation and you discover, indeed, that's true. It's not the magic in the berries. It's the fact that the berries are rich, and just look at this color, rich in vitamin A and vitamin C. So when you soak something like a mountain ash berry in an alcohol base of some kind or another, I would have chosen brandy because I'm a brandy person, but they chose vodka because it was there and closer to what they would have been used to drinking back in Lithuania. And that alcohol extracts the goodness from the berries. Also, the berries were used to make jams and jellies. They're very edible. They're very good for you to eat, fresh and dry, and preserved in alcohol. Hawthorn, right here. These are hawthorn berries right here. Bright red berries with little black eyes to them. I love hawthorn. It's just, this is the most magical tree. This is a tree that the wee people love, and that's another whole story. But hawthorn berries and the hawthorn tree was considered very protective. And the berries in particular, because they were bright red. Well, guess what? To this very day, hawthorn berries are used as a heart medicine. You can, if you have a store nearby where you can buy homeopathic medications, or you know a homeopathic practitioner, check with them, because hawthorn berries are used for heart medicine. A hawthorn tea is prescribed to help regulate your heartbeat. And plus the hawthorn berries have been used for jams, jellies, and just dried and used in soups and stews, so that they're very good for you. Again, not only there's the medicinal part of the heart medication, but also these berries are red, which would indicate that they have vitamin A and vitamin C in them. So that it's the magic was in, if a plant was considered magic, if a plant is considered magic, it has some kind of a medicinal component to it. Something that ancient people observed and noticed that, okay, if I use this, if I eat this, if I take this, it's going to make me feel better. And therefore, it has some kind of power in it. That power happens to be medicinal. The vast majority of all of our culinary herbs have a small amount of antibacterial effect on our bodies. So if you use fresh herbs on a regular basis, and dried herbs also, but fresh is better, but dried will be okay, on a regular day in, day out basis, you will be getting a small but powerful broadband infusion into your everyday eating of an antibacterial effects from all the different herbs that you might use. This little arrangement also has garlic. There is no herb that is more powerful against magic and evil than garlic. Should you ever feel uncomfortable, should you ever worry that maybe your house was haunted, or maybe you just didn't want to walk through that corner of the cemetery just as the sun was going down, or maybe that there was something out there that you really didn't want to have anything to do with, just pop a piece of garlic in your back pocket and you'll be perfectly safe. Garlic is the single, garlic happens to have, it's the single strongest charm against all evil, but garlic happens to have incredible antibacterial properties to it. So indeed, if you use garlic on a regular basis, you are going to be warding off all kinds of infections. There's juniper here. There's two different kinds of juniper here. Juniper has very strong, some say that juniper was the strongest of any kind of anti-witch plant material that you could possibly have. The juniper was the one tree that you could burn and it would fumigate and dispel any evil from any corner of your home or building or structure that you happen to be in. Now, juniper happens to be the oldest form of incense. It precedes its records of juniper being used as incense on altars go back many more years than records of frankincense being used as an incense on altars. There are two different kinds of juniper here. One has berries. This one doesn't. They are both prickly. They are both multi-needled, very fine, small needles, and they both have the power to repel all witches. Ancient lore said that if you planted a juniper outside your door, and by the way, you have juniper growing all down the banking and back of your mailbox. That whole hill is covered with juniper, rug juniper. No witch will ever get up that driveway. Not ever. That's because according to a law of nature, witches are required to stop and count every single needle on juniper before they can pass by. And there's so many needles, and there's so many on a lot of junipers, so many prickly needles, that they just get completely annoyed and go stomping off to somebody else's home, that they can do a lot more mischief because there's no juniper around to protect. But juniper berries, and I deliberately picked a piece of juniper from our yard that has a couple of berries on it. Juniper berries are excellent in cooking. That they are full of nutrients. They add a great deal of flavor to wintertime meat dishes. And any of you who enjoy gin automatically are using juniper, because gin means juniper in Dutch. Gin was originally, and I guess still could be considered, a medicinal drink. good gin has an enormous amount of different or a wide variety of different herbs that are used in the making of the gin. And really good gin has those botanicals etched on the side of the bottle. So the next time you're in the liquor store, stop and start reading gin bottles and see what's in there, because there's a whole cluster of herbs, but always, always, always juniper. Always juniper. It's so good for you. Silver pennies. Silver pennies have absolutely no medicinal value whatsoever, but silver, sterling silver, has been a protection against evil spirits since the dawn of time. It's considered the purest of all metals. Iron chases away the little people, keeps you safe from a lot of wandering spirits. I have no idea what gold does, but silver is the perfect protection. And there may be some people who remember a program that when I was a kid, we listened to on the radio all the time called The Lone Ranger. And the Lone Ranger always left his calling card after he had solved a problem. And his calling card was always a silver bullet. I don't know where he got his silver bullets, but he seemed to have quite a good supply of them, because every week he would leave a silver bullet. And I didn't know until I was an adult and began learning about plant lore and folklore that that silver bullet showed that he had cleaned the area of all possible negative forces. And I grew up on Nantucket and also going up to Cape Ann on a regular basis between those two places when I was a kid. And Cape Ann in those days had a whole center that was wild called Dogtown Common. And I remember reading legends about Dogtown Common, and the last witches were done in, because it was believed that witches lived in Dogtown Common. Last witches were done in by a soldier on his way home from the Civil War, who was crossing Dogtown Common, happened to notice there was a witch flying around and decided he would take care of that. And so he stopped and somehow took one of his buttons, which was silver, and turned it into a bullet, molded it into a bullet, and shot her dead. That was the end of witchcraft on Dogtown Common. But this silver, this is Linaria. This has no possible medicinal, edible use in your garden, but it does remind you of the moon under which witches danced, and also it's silver to protect you from evil. So it's a lot of fun to grow Linaria. If you want to grow Linaria in your garden, you need to just drop the seeds. It's a self-sowing plant, and it's a biennial. So you just drop the seeds in fertile ground, pat them in, mark them so you don't dig them up in the spring. And the first year you'll get a cluster of leaves. The second year, suddenly there'll be some stalks that come up, some purple flowers at the top, little purple flowers, and then the seed pods come after that. So you get spring flowers, you get green summer pods, and by the time summer begins to age out along the end of middle of July to the middle of August, you begin to get those pods forming, and you can slip them in and end up with your own collection of silver pennies. Wheat, grains. As you wander around tomorrow and today, take a look at houses. Is there a bundle of wheat hung on the front door? Is there a bundle of corn hung on the front door? Do you see grains displayed anywhere at all? An ancient custom was to hang bunches of grain on any opening into your dwelling, any windows, any doorways, on a door, over a window a bunch of some kind of a grain. This is wheat. This is broomcorn. Both of these are in the grass family. Both of them are easy to grow. The broomcorn is native to North America and was used extensively in feeding cattle and then actually making brooms. It was the Shakers that began our broom making. The brooms that we know them today come from this broomcorn, which gets to be, because I used to grow it, about 6 feet tall or so with big heads on it. And it's a heavy feeder, but it's just absolutely lovely. But when you look at this arrangement, and then you move over to something like this, which represents a total harvest of possible things that could be used to support a community's growth and health throughout the non-growing months, you can see a very strong relationship here between these two the collections. And this is just some collection. I mean, there are wonderful books that tell you. This one covers not just Halloween and Thanksgiving, but year round. It's called Green Magic. It came out probably 20 or 25 years ago, but it is still available and it is definitely worth reading if you're interested in plant lore. And there are 2 encyclopedias here that could be of interest to anybody who's curious about plants and their magical uses. Both of these are by somebody by the name of Scott Cunningham, and he wrote these books are a number of years old now. However, The Magical Household and Scott Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs gives you a good background on how herbs and plants were used for their supposedly magical aspects. And one of the things associated with, and I just have to tell you this because, especially because Lisa's here, one of the things associated with Halloween in our American minds are apples. And many of us have memories of bobbing for apples or having apples strung on strings and trying to bite them. Apples became associated with Samhain or All Hallows Eve when the Romans conquered Britain. And when they conquered Britain, they brought with them all of their gods and goddesses. And their goddess of harvest, Pomona, her symbol was the apple. Now, apples were growing in the British Isles long before, and Ireland, long before the Romans arrived. In the very tip of County Mayo, there is a very ancient site, goes back 4,000 or 5,000 years, a village that was discovered just on the edge of Donegal Bay that is called the Katy Fields, and it is absolutely fascinating to visit there. It was an agricultural village that over a period of hundreds of years became buried in peat bogs. And back in the 30s, a teacher was out cutting peat and discovered a wall. And from that time on, excavations have been going on there. And pollen has been discovered in that site. Growing there, there were 2 trees that were very important in that village 5,000 years ago. Apples and filberts or hazelnuts, the 2 of them. And the apple was sacred to the great goddess who controlled all growth, as well as Pomona, hundreds and thousands, several thousand years later. when the Romans invaded. And when Lisa was in kindergarten, she came home one day at this time of the year from school, and she said she had to show me something that her teacher had just taught her. And I said, what is it? She said, well, you have to have an apple and you have to have a knife, and you have to cut the apple in half. And she said, when you cut it in half and you open it up, you see a star. And that star means that it's been kissed by an angel. And that's the Christian interpretation of the star in the center of every apple that was sacred to the great goddess, because the belief came down and got Christianized along the way that this is proof that the goddess loves everybody and provides for them. And this is her promise right here, that star in the center of the apple. So apples definitely for Halloween. And apples are absolutely fascinating. I don't know if you all know that you can take an apple seed and plant it and get a tree that has nothing to do with the apple that you have. That every single apple seed is different, just like every single human being is different. Every single apple seed is different. The only way you can get a consistent apple crop is to graft a cutting onto an existing tree. And it's just fascinating. Also in this little tray here, I have 3, by the way, apples, 3 hazelnuts, and 3 acorns. And there's a very old belief, because acorns, of course, come from oak trees, and therefore have magical powers if you want to invoke them, that women, if women carry an acorn in their pockets, it will keep you from getting old. It will keep you young. And also, if you put acorns on your window sashes around your house or your windowsill, it will keep your house from getting struck by lightning. Also, should you be interested in accumulating wealth, then you should take a nice fresh acorn and go outdoors some evening after dark under a full moon and plant that acorn, and surely some lucky bit of money will come your way not long after that. But here, 3 apples, 3 acorns, 3 hazelnuts adds up to 9. The most magic of all numbers is 3, and the most powerful of all numbers is 3 times 3, which is 9, which is what's in this lovely little wooden tray here. Bells in churches, in religious ceremonies, and just plain bells were considered incredible forms of protective magic. All those cows with cowbells on them, that was to protect them from evil. All those boats with bells on them, to protect them from evil. Those bells to cleanse the area that the sound could be heard from all negative spirits, so that as you were walking to church, you would be safe. When I was in 7th grade, we moved from Nantucket to Southern Ohio. And Nantucket, we went trick-or-treating. In Southern Ohio, all of a sudden, on Halloween, there were huge bonfires. Turns out that where we were living, there were a lot of families whose ancestors had come from Germany and brought the bonfire tradition with them. Huge bonfires, except of course they were for football rallies. It just happened to be on Halloween. And I was told that when Halloween came, we needed to go to the 5 and 10 immediately and buy. Yeah. Sure enough, the 5 and 10 had a whole shipment coming in of copper cowbells. And all the kids went out trick-or-treat with their bells. I was in carried bells with us. We went trick-or-treating, and I asked my mother, and she said, well, it's probably to keep you from getting hit by a car. But it wasn't. It's because it's an old tradition that as we were ringing our cowbells, walking along doing trick-or-treating, we were clearing any negative spirits. And maybe that was cars out of control too. Anyway, but so if you move over to Thanksgiving, I know I'm on the Cape. I know Plymouth is very close by, but I also know for a fact that our Thanksgiving has its roots, and that first Thanksgiving that we all grew up learning about had its roots in very ancient European tradition, very ancient, absolutely no culture in the temperate area of this world has ever not had some kind of a harvest celebration. And our Thanksgiving originally in England and then again in Holland was a harvest celebration. The growing season was winding down. There was enough food for the community to last them through the non-growing season, and thanks were given for all of that. Thanks in churches, thanks in barn dances, thanks in, bobbing for apples, thanks in doing all of the ritual things, thanks in dreaming about who you were going to marry, thanks, all of those things, all the ritual things that go along with, like, phew, it looks as if we're going to make it through the winter and we're not going to have people dying. We're not going to be hungry. We will make it through this winter because we have enough to do that. So when you think about decorating for Thanksgiving, when you think about what kinds of decorations can I put on my home, on my door, on my table for Thanksgiving, for this feast that we all come together to enjoy, I would encourage you to think of what a total harvest was. I would encourage you to think about not about mums and definitely not about football games, but about what did it take for a community, a farm, a small farming community. What did it take to keep people healthy and alive throughout the winter when nothing was growing, when literally nothing was growing? This is a collection of ideas, certainly grains, most decidedly grains, but also back to these oak leaves. Oak provided wood for shelter. Oak provided wood for heat. There's nothing better than an oak fire to keep you warm. Oak provided acorns for dyeing clothes, for feeding animals, particularly pigs, hogs, sometimes for making flour in poor communities, or communities where there was a shortage of food. Acorns are good to eat if you process them properly. Acorns were used in preparing leather for use. Again, you have hawthorn berries, and I guarantee you somewhere around here, somebody has a few hawthorn trees, and the berries are gorgeous right now, fresh, and then just use them and they'll dry in place. As I say, any kind of grain. Over here, these are allium seed heads that represent the entire allium family. And allium family is our, oh, and also right there, these are, my shallots were a complete failure this year, thanks to I mean, we were 14 inches above normal rainfall up on the North Shore, and the alliums did very poorly. So this is one of my little clusters of what should be great big fat shallots, but I decided to use it in this arrangement. But allium seed heads here and shallots here to represent that entire giant family of garlic and onions and shallots and leeks and all the members of the allium family that we eat and enjoy. And you can buy them at the supermarket and put them on picks and put them in here. There are potatoes in here. This hoard represents the entire squash family, which would keep a good squash harvest, could keep, you know, half the community alive throughout the winter because of the hard skin on the squashes, like blue hubbards. I mean, some of those blue hubbards can get so big that you have to take an axe to cut them up. I mean, they're with very hard skins, and that hard skin keeps the moisture in. So you can pick a blue hubbard, pick some of the squash members of the squash family in October, put them in your barn, and end up eating them sometime the beginning of March or April, and they're still edible. A little on the dry side, but still edible if you're hungry. There's teasel here to represent the fact that fabrics needed to be harvested, woven, and the teasel was used to create a very soft surface to woolen fabrics. So teasels, these are very tiny teasels. Teasels were grown, they're about this long. You could run an iron rod through them and then use that to tease your wool. If you were weaving rugs, if you were weaving fabric for, say, suits or dresses or skirts, and in order to soften that fabric and make it more wearable. Here, these are Nigella seed pods. Some of you may be growing Nigella in your garden as a lovely flower, but these seed pods have edible seeds in them. And in the Mideast, those seeds are used in cheese making. And sometimes you can still get a string cheese in some supermarkets, at least in our area, where you pull them apart, they're little black seeds. That's Nigella seed in there. Another name for Nigella seed is black cumin. And it's a very nourishing seed. Again, here is the mountain ash. And over here is a cluster of, just here is a cluster of safflower. And I don't know if you can see up close, but if you come into the library, I think this is going to be in the library for a while, you can look at the safflower closely and you'll see that it has dried on the top of this little bulb-like structure, orange flower, a little orange flower. That orange flower right there is what colored the saffron rose of Buddhist monks. It's what colored all kinds, it used to be called, was referred to back in the Middle Ages as bastard saffron, because you could pick it and dry it and it came in large barrels, and you could buy it by the scoop and use it in soups and stews and all winter long to color them and give them some good color. However, in that coloring, think about the color of the orange flower. Again, you're getting vitamins. You're getting vitamin A, vitamin C, and other vitamins. Saffron was used to, or the safflower was used to, as I say, dye clothes, but also the seed, safflower oil that we all buy and use in cooking and find in every supermarket now, comes from the seed of that plant. It's a white seed, and when you squish it in your fingers, it's very full of oil. It's an excellent, excellent oil plant. And if you happen to feed the birds, buy bird food that has white saffron seed in it, and you'll get every cardinal in the neighborhood coming to your door because they love safflower seeds. What else do I have in here? Oh, there's yarrow because of its medicinal benefits, serious medicinal benefits. This is what I could gather from just my workshop and the kitchen. Sage, most decidedly sage here. There's thyme somewhere in here. Yep, in back of the sage, I have thyme. There's also poppy pods that you can gather from your garden. Those poppy seeds are very important. All through Central Europe, you still have a huge number of recipes that all winter long call for poppy seeds. Poppy seeds, every single poppy seed that we eat has a tiny, tiny amount of what makes opium in it. And every single poppy seed raises your spirits. It doesn't make you a drug addict. It's simply you eat a piece of pastry or a bagel that has poppy seeds, you will feel a little bit better after 12 gloomy days in a row. And if you've ever been to Europe in the winter, particularly Eastern Europe, it can get very gloomy and gray and rainy and damp. And they eat a lot of poppy seeds over there. It's very, plus of course, poppies provide us with some serious medicinal benefits. So this is just a small collection of potential things that you can use in an arrangement to represent a total harvest for your Thanksgiving table. We don't need chrysanthemums. We don't need footballs on our Thanksgiving table. We need to stop and remember why we're doing this. What is this all about? We're just happy to be together and happy to have an abundance of food and available to us on a regular basis, even if our supply chains are broken. There's one thing that I forgot to talk about here, and you can barely see it, so I probably won't even, but that is St. John's wort. And St. John's wort grows wild up and down the side of our roads. Here it is, right here. This is St. John's wort, seeds of St. John's wort. This is what you can buy to this very day as a tincture or as a homeopathic medication to help with a body that has been bruised, help with bruising, also help to feel calm, and also help with sleep problems. So there's a lot out there that have interesting, fascinating histories, serious uses, and it can be fun to go walking around looking for. Let me just tell you one other thing, and I will say thank you, and there may be questions, I'm not sure, but this is a book that I bought in New Mexico a number of years ago because it tells the story of the Mexican Day of the Dead. And we have our Halloween. And after our Halloween, thanks to the Christian church, we have All Saints Day and All Souls Day. So on the Christian calendar, Christian yearly calendar, we have Halloween, All Hallows Eve. That's Samhain in disguise. We have followed that. That's followed by November 1st, which is All Saints Day, and November 2nd, which is All Souls Day. If you are a church-going person, you go to church on one of those 2 days. We had a visitor from Poland once at our house who said, "Oh my gosh, it's All Souls Day. I have to get to a cemetery." We said, "Why?" And she said, "Because that's when you go to the cemetery and you light candles. But I don't have any graves here, but I want to go to a cemetery." So we said, "Okay." So we gave her some candles and we all took a nice walk and went to the closest cemetery, and she found a grave that she could set her candle up on and lit it, and we left, and she was feeling very comfortable about that. Then I began learning about the Day of the Dead in Mexico. And the Day of the Dead in Mexico, I thought was quite weird. After all, I am a New Englander, I'm a Northerner. I just like, what the heck is this all about? This is really weird. That was my initial reaction until I began learning about it. And this book is so dear to me. This is the story of a little girl who loved her grandmother dearly. And she and her grandmother did everything together. And then her grandmother died. And Abuelita was the little girl was so sad. And she was sad for almost a whole year. And then she noticed that her family was starting to get ready for something. And what they were getting ready for was the celebration of the Day of the Dead. And it was explained to her that the spirit of her grandmother would come back on that day, just the way in Celtic times the spirits would come back. That on the Day of the Dead, that she would be able to communicate with her grandmother. And so she begins a project so that she has a gift to give her grandmother on the Day of the Dead. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story, but it explains the Day of the Dead and how important it is in Mexico for the families. Because what they do is they prepare dishes that their departed ones enjoyed. They get the drink their departed ones enjoyed, and they all go to the cemetery and spend the night. They have a picnic, they drink, they sing songs, they leave gifts, and they just remember and enjoy. And I just think it's the most civilized, fabulous thing. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. So if you have a chance to get a hold of this book and read it, by all means do that. So there are other books here. If anybody has questions, I'd be happy to answer questions, and we may be running out of time, I'm not sure.
And the two Ians we have on Zoom with us, you're welcome to ask questions if you have any. We are raffling off the Halloween arrangement, and I've put a ticket in for both of you if you're local. I'm not sure if you are or not. If you win, you can come pick it up here at the Osterville Library. We're open until 5 today, and I'm sorry, 4 today and 12 to 4 tomorrow.
And there's also, Lisa will be emailing you the handout for today, which are suggestions for a Halloween garden, should you be interested in planting one. So,
all right.
You guys have any questions or comments?
thought it was really interesting how so many of the different traditions that we have, we thought that they were always Christian. And here come to find out that, you know, everything is sort of the same but different.
That's it, exactly. I mean, it's
Many different cultures.
that's what's so fascinating to me is that, you know, we think we're standing in modern times. I'm standing on this floor, on the second floor of the Osterville Library, and this is modern. I'm standing on all the traditions, all the customs, all the beliefs that went, you know, reach back thousands of years in human communities. I mean, I might be here physically, but I'm also representing, and in all of our daily lives, we do that. Do you guys ever knock on wood? For luck? Do you remember where you learned it?
Always knew it.
Yeah.
Did anybody teach it to you? Nobody. No.
Yeah.
We all know. Good luck. That was, if you were a woodsman thousands of years ago, you would believe that a tree had a spirit. And that spirit could get really ticked off if you didn't, excuse me, I'll be cutting you down. Give it an opportunity to either compose itself or leave, one or the other. We still do it.
Yep.
We still do all kinds of things.
So you said that
Hanging corn on our doors, that has nothing to do with
decoration.
no, no, that's not fall decorating. That's okay. We're appeasing passing spirits because that's what people did. So anyways,
So is that also true of people that have fruits on their door and a wreath this time of year? That's a thankful thing, or is that a welcoming thing?
yeah,
For welcoming neighbors and showing that you're
it's
hospitable.
it's welcoming neighbors, but it is also, you know, there's food for passing spirits. I mean,
And how-
it's to
so-
decorate the door, and a door is an entrance. So it's something that was once considered sacred, that you passed from outside to inside and you step over a threshold and you step into a new space. And so that's like passing from the everyday world into the spirit world. We do the same thing when we die. We go into a new space. And so that's every time you go through a doorway, there's a little bit of that. That's why doors are sometimes blessed.
I was gonna say, sometimes the Catholics have the crucifix
Yeah,
in their bedroom
they do.
doors.
And then
Inside
the
the
Jewish,
door.
and then in the Jewish faith, they're I forget what they're called, but there's something that you put next to your door that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, and I don't know what other cultures do around the world. I mean, my knowledge is mainly European based.
And I wondered if, you know, when we went to go and visit special historical places in New England, they always feature the pineapple as a hospitable thing. And I wondered where that came from. Why?
The pine cone,
How in the world would a pineapple be?
it's the pineapple represents the pine cone.
Okay.
And there is a pine cone in here, by the way, which I didn't even talk about. It's a spruce cone. But the pine tree has all kinds of symbolism to it. And the cone represents the tree. And so that there are entire books written about tree lore, about what different trees mean and how they were used to protect people and in homes but that, yeah, it's the pineapple took the place of the pine cone.
Okay. And at Christmas time, people would cut down pine trees and bring them indoors.
Yeah.
Is that also to raise the spirits and?
That
you know,
goes,
that whole tradition. has gotta be-
that goes all the way back to pretty much Germanic tribes did that to bring that life into the house, and all the energy that comes in with that living tree. It didn't used to be trees. Before trees came in, it was boughs, branches,
Okay.
and you would decorate at that time of the year during the winter solstice. And that was a solstice thing to bring that energy into the house and or into your dwelling, wherever that happened to be. And because it was protective.
Can I also just do a little plug here?
Yes.
That Betsy will be back on December 11th to do a whole program about Christmas and the holidays, right? The winter holidays.
I think it's the festive table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there'll
Signed
be,
up already.
you could, so we'll stick to Thanksgiving and Halloween.
There'll be more apples.
And then you can get a whole other
Maybe an
program
orange, who knows?
about the next holidays coming up.
So anyway, but it's fascinating because we're still doing what our ancestors did, and our ancestors before that, and our ancestors before that.
Right.
I mean, we're still doing it and loving it. Yeah, and it enriches our lives.
For different reasons or the same reasons, and it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. No, it doesn't. We do a lot of things without knowing why we're doing it.
Right. I wondered about the other charms on your necklace there. You said you have these silver
This is.
garland pendant. What else is on
Yeah,
there?
this is from a fairy festival that I was queen of the fairies at a fairy festival once. And this was something that this guy found in his car after a date once. I think that's where it came from. And he gave it to me, and I've got his picture in it.
Oh, that's nice.
And this is an agate that my father found and had made into part of a necklace for my mother. So this, and I just put them all together. But this is my silver garlic, which I had a retail store for a lot of years, and this was one of the things. We sold this line of sterling. And when I closed the shop, I decided this was coming home with me.
Yeah.
So, we used to at Halloween in the shop. Anybody who came in would get a clove of garlic on a necklace. We would sit and string garlic and just put it on around everybody's neck to protect them from any evil forces that might be out there. And then 24-hour period between October 30th and November 1st. So remember that. Just, you get worried about something, just throw a piece of garlic in your pocket, you'll be all set. So, okay.
All right, well, thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you both for coming.
We will do, for our Zoom guests, we will be doing the drawing after we shut the Zoom down, but I will email both of you today's program, and I will also, sorry, I'll come over here so I can talk to you. I will also let you know whether you won our door prize today. Thank you. Thank you, Betsy.
And one more thing before you shut off.
Okay.
If one of you Anns wins this, happens to take, don't worry about watering. Just it's in wet oasis at the moment. I mean, this is mechanics. Don't worry about trying to water this. Just let it dry in place. And it's mostly dry anyway. There's just a little bit of fresh plant material in here. So, and it should last you a good long time. And you can eat the garlic. It's all organically grown.
I want to eat our
Thank you.